Welcome everyone to the Township Council meeting, Monday, August 8th, 2022. Councilwoman Seaver, can you please give us a salute to the flag? You may be seated. Mrs. Kraus, please read the notice.
Take notice that adequate notice of this meeting has been provided in accordance with NJSA 10:4-8 and NJSA 10:4-10 as follows. The notice of the meeting was prominently posted on the bulletin board at the municipal building located at 225 Main Street, Little Falls, New Jersey, on March 11th, 2022. A copy of the notice was mailed to the North Jersey Herald and News and the Record on the same date. Additionally, a copy of the notice was filed in the office of the township clerk on said date. A link and a telephone number to join the meeting virtually can be accessed on the township website at www.lfnj.com. Electronic provisions have been established for the public to participate during the public comment portion of the meeting.
Thank you, Mrs. Kraus. At this time, please call the roll.
Councilmember Hablitz,
Present.
Councilmember Kawadi,
Present.
Councilmember Seaver,
Present.
Councilmember Vanchery,
Present.
Council President Scoba.
Present. Mrs. Kraus, please read the statement of public comment.
Anyone wishing to address the Township Council may do so through the Council President. Please give your name and address for the record. Comments are to be limited to 3 minutes. However, if appropriate, you may be granted additional time in the sole discretion of the Council President. Members of the public who have joined the meeting virtually and desire to provide comment shall raise their virtual hand in the Zoom application. The meeting moderator will cue the members of the public that wish to provide comment, and the Council President will recognize them in order. Members of the public who have joined the meeting by calling in must press *6 to mute and unmute themselves and *9 to raise their hand. Members of the public who have joined the meeting via the Zoom application must click the reactions icon and then the raise hand icon. Please give your name and address for the record. Once the process is complete, we will return to the regular order of business.
Thank you. Can I have a motion to open to the public?
So moved.
Moved by Councilmember Quaddy, second by Councilmember Hablitz. All those in favor, open to the public, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, signify by saying nay. The floor is now open. You can come up to the podium, Norman. I'm sorry, sir. You have to say it when you get to the mic, sir.
My name is Norman Scherzer.
Thank you.
I live at 26 Birch Road in Little Falls. Thank you for today's session. I have 3 questions about the contract that we have with the Clifton Health Department as a foundation for the meeting tomorrow night with the Clifton Health Department. Giving everybody a copy, but I don't know whether you prefer to answer them one at a time, or whether you want me to read all 3. What's your preference?
Well, Mr. Sawyer, why don't you read all 3s for the record? Go ahead.
So this is what has been in the contract for some time. It's in the current contract. First section says, I believe these are paragraphs 4, 5, and 6 in the contract. The recipient shall maintain at its own expense an employee who will receive all telephone calls and act as a secretary to the health department. He or she shall be physically present in the recipient's municipal offices to confer with the public as necessary or required on the day-to-day operations of the office. Of course, my question is, do we have such a person? Second question, the health officer shall furnish the recipient with monthly reports of all services rendered by the health officer and his or her staff under the terms of the agreement. I'd like to know whether or not we've gotten such monthly reports and whether we can have access to them if we have. And finally, remember last meeting, we made an issue that you took liberties to correct, and that is that the nature of government has changed and we no longer have a Board of Health. But the contract with Clifton reads as follows. It is understood that the boards of health of the provider and of the recipient shall meet jointly periodically as may be deemed necessary by either party. Joint discussions will involve mutual problems and needs, objectives, methods of attain the objectives and an evaluation of accomplishment. And so my question here is, if we don't have a Board of Health, explain this section, and is there another body that's meeting with the Clifton Health Department? So those are my three questions. The rest of the contract I felt was pretty straightforward.
Thank you, sir. Before we proceed, Councilman Vanchery, would you like to tell the public and remind them of the meeting we're having tomorrow?
Sure, Council President. So based on the last meeting, we reached out to the Clifton Health Department. We scheduled a town hall tomorrow that's going to take place here as well as online from 6 to 7:30 p.m. So we'll have members of the team from Clifton as well as the Passaic County Department as well here. And it'll be a chance to talk about COVID, monkeypox, and other health-related issues. So if you can join in person tomorrow, please do so. If not, you can join virtual.
Mayor, would you like to comment on the residents' questions and if Cynthia Kraus, her role is as well in this?
Sure, and I think that this is something that can be addressed even further tomorrow, so I don't spend too much time related to the Health Department who will be here tomorrow. But the first and foremost is the regular meetings that occur between the Clifton Health Department and the municipality are oftentimes happening through myself. I take that information and have provided it at some point for a long period of time daily to the residents of the Township of Little Falls through email blasts, more recently monthly through monthly updates regarding COVID, which has taken almost all of the headlines through the municipality. And those updates continue to be provided on a monthly basis regarding COVID as of lately. As far as the rest of these, the health officer does provide reports to myself. They are not always in written form. However, I do get at least monthly reports from the health department regarding issues that are ongoing in town and issues that they are addressing. So that has continued to occur. And here, the municipal clerk is the one that can handle and field any phone calls from any residents that need to be addressed here in the municipal building, and contact can be made, and voicemails, if the phone is not answered, can be left with the municipal clerk, who can address those and forward them to the health department.
So with regard to the issue of the meeting between two boards of health, I appreciate that you're in contact as the mayor, but other cities either have a board of health or a public health committee or what have you. So this contract is calling for two groups of people, one representing the recipient of service, one representing the provider of service. And it's calling for these two groups of people to meet periodically. And we don't have a board of health.
That's correct. Yeah, and that's not been, there has been no Board of Health here in Little Falls for, I don't know since when.
May I ask why that's in the contract?
It is a contract that Clifton has provided us. It has some boilerplate language included in it, this being some of it. And as a result, this was the contract and the language that was used. Again, there is no actual Board of Health here in Little Falls, but there's certainly regular communication, and the information that is pertinent to the public is disseminated.
No, I hear you, and I'm not trying to nitpick things, but clearly we have a contract, and I'm confused about the contract process. Why sign a contract calling for boards of health to meet periodically if we don't have a board of health? I just don't understand that.
Sure, and I can appreciate your comments. I mean, I would raise the fact that the perfect time to have raised that exact question, if you were looking to have a couple of words changed in a contract, would have been right before it was actually approved. It is currently approved with this language. And again, although we don't have necessarily a Board of Health, my communication with them serves essentially as that role.
So for the record, there's neither a board of health nor a public health committee, and the person who represents Little Falls is the mayor.
Correct.
Okay. And my last clarification is with regard to the question of reports. You constantly list in regular agenda meetings up to 10 different reports that the township gets. Police department, recreation department, what have you. There's never been a mention, as far as I can see, of a report from the health department. And so what I'm asking for is, is there a formal report from the Department of Health with regard to the services it provides that is provided in writing to the members of this council?
As of late, it has been the COVID updates, which are not attached or included in the agenda itself because they are emailed out immediately upon receipt, and they are, again, going out on a monthly basis.
So I'd like to address just one follow-up to the members of the Township Committee. Have you received in the past year a written report from the Department of Health about the services it has provided?
Here, no.
Anybody?
No, the answer to your question is no.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Kusia, is there, excuse me, sir, one moment. Is there anyone in the chat, we'll go back and forth, that wants to come in?
No.
Okay, yes, sir.
Good evening, Al
Good evening.
DC, 27 Dewey Avenue. As a follow-up to Mr. Kurz's questions, when was this contract signed?
About 3 weeks ago.
This contract that he's stating from 3 weeks ago?
Correct.
Who reviewed it on the part of the town?
Myself,
Township attorney?
myself in the council, correct?
The council and township attorney and yourself?
Correct.
How could you sign something when you don't have a board of health? That clearly, it talks about it in a number of places in the contract. I mean, you stated earlier that, oh, we haven't had one since we had the change of government. That's why I asked when this contract was signed. So clearly, we didn't have one. I don't understand from a legal perspective how you can sign a contract for, I think it's $150,000 a year, where in fact, the statements or the portions of the contract, key portions, they don't exist in this town.
I beg to differ with what you refer to as the key portions of this contract. The
Well,
key
let-
portions
okay,
of the
let's just
contract
see, how
are the
could you approve
services
it?
that
How
are
could
being
you
rendered.
approve it
Mr. Abney,
without
Mr.
that
Abney,
language
excuse
in
me, sir.
put
Mr.
down?
Abney, so you can ask a question,
Sure.
but we have to be able to answer your question. And
Okay.
that's just, okay?
The pertinent portion of the contract, the most important portions of the contract have to do with the services that the Clifton Health Department provides to the Township of Little Falls. And those services, they have never fallen short on providing those services to the municipality.
Does the contract also list a number of deliverables? In other words, what do they do?
Yes, absolutely.
It does. It does. Now, so you're saying that even though the language of the contract specifically points to a board of health and a person who's going to act as a liaison to the board of health, both key issues in this contract, we don't meet the criteria of that contract.
What you consider to be key issues in the contract, I find
Well,
to have.
Tell me how you can explain if the language says the boards of both municipalities shall meet. The municipality receiving the services, i.e. Little Falls, shall provide a full-time worker as a liaison from the Board of Health, from the receiving municipality to and with the provider of the service. We don't have it. The contract, the language is not, we're not meeting up to the language.
You're mincing two different portions of a contract that, by the way, was on an agenda for everyone in the public to review. But I find it interesting that during the meeting, when comments could or should be raised prior to approval and ratification by the council, that there's no comments being made. Only now, a week after the contract is signed, is anyone here upset about what it is that was signed?
I'm not.
Now, again, you're
upset.
mincing
I'm
two
not
portions.
upset.
If I may finish,
asking-
please?
I'm asking a very,
Mr.
very
Mr. Abney,
You're
again,
mincing,
simple question.
let us
and
respond as we
you
listen.
are mincing two portions of the contract. The first is there someone here full-time that can accept calls to deal with this? The answer is yes. That is the municipal clerk. She can be contacted at any time. That addresses portion one of the entire contract. Or I should say, of these particular concerns, because that's only one very small portion of the entire contract. The second part is that the boards of health should meet. That's the part two to what it is that you are raising. I act as the individual who meets with the Clifton health officers to receive the information here in Little Falls.
So in effect, you are the Board of Health for Little Falls, and you therefore, that meets the requirement and the language in the contract.
I don't claim to be the Board of Health. I am the individual in the municipality who meets with the Clifton Health Department
Well,
to
it could
receive
be the-
information
it
and
could be
provide
the head of
information.
our Department of Public Works for that matter, but I'm asking you, how can you have language that specifically makes reference to our Board of Health when we don't have one? I think it's a kind of simple question. Can you explain that to me?
Sure. Again, there was some boilerplate language contained in the contract, this being part of it. I act in the role, again, I don't claim to be the Board of Health for the Township of Little Falls, but I act in the role of receiving the information from the board, or I should say from the Clifton Health officers, to provide to the residents of Little Falls. And any information that is important and relevant to day-to-day activities of any residents here in Little Falls is disseminated in email blasts.
Okay, absolutely perfect, but you're not answering the question.
Mr. Kusia, I see it.
You have Mr. Patel would like to speak.
Okay. Can you allow the person in, please?
Unmute. Mr.
Can you hear, can you take,
I'm clicking his unmute button.
Right.
He has to unmute. There you go. It's a she. Oh, I'm sorry, Mrs. Patel.
Ms. Patel, can you hear us?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you. You have the floor is yours.
Good evening. Thank you, Mayor and Council. Jana Patel, 14 Clove Road.
Good evening.
I just wanted to provide a different perspective to the traffic studies that were previously discussed. Mayor, you previously stated that multiple studies were done concerning the impact that the new projects would have on traffic in this town. Would you agree?
I've indicated that there's been traffic studies, correct?
Okay. And you also stated that those studies concluded that the impact would be minimal, correct?
Correct.
So I do agree that each of the applicants for each of the projects did submit a traffic study. But Mayor, let's be real. You wouldn't hire an expert to testify at trial on your client's behalf if they did not support the position that you are putting before the court. I believe this is the same thing here. I did review the studies, and each project did a study for their individual project that they presented to the board. None of the studies showed what impact every other project would have on the traffic in this town. So, for example, Project A did a study that states that there will be minimal impact to traffic in Little Falls based on their proposed project. Then Project B does a study that states that Project B will have little impact to traffic. However, Project B's study doesn't take into consideration the impact that Project A will have on the traffic in Little Falls. So the last project approved, 80 Patterson, which was March of this year, didn't take any of the 3 prior projects already approved. So what do these results actually conclude? What do they prove? To me, they don't show us anything.
Mayor, would you like to respond?
Sure. The planning boards who have reviewed the traffic studies have been privy to each and every traffic study as they've been provided. The planning board members can each provide as much weight to each of those studies as they would like. They have always had the opportunities to scrutinize, and they have on a number of occasions, the traffic studies and reports that have been provided. And again, the planning board has been privy to each and every one of those studies, who they can each take into consideration the impact that each one of those additional projects may or would have on the town once it's completed. And that is certainly something that has been discussed because I've had the opportunity to discuss it with a number of the individual planning board members from time to time. So each of those things has certainly been considered. And of course, it's understood that each of those studies, when done individually, isn't taking into consideration any of the prior ones unless they've already been completed and already included as part of that project. So all of those things were certainly considered by each and every planning board member, including myself.
So respectfully, each applicant is required to provide a study by an expert. With all due respect, I don't believe either one of the members of council or yourself are an expert on traffic study. So having considered each study individually at any specific time does not conclude to an expert opinion as to what the overall impact on traffic is going to be in Little Falls.
Ms. Patel, did you ever, excuse me,
Would
ma'am.
you agree?
Yes, Ms. Patel, did you ever attend a planning board meeting?
No, I do not, but I've reviewed everything that was done. You have,
You
you have
never,
said
excuse me,
time and
you
time
never,
again.
excuse me, but you never attended a planning board meeting, correct? You never were to see how how it works, how the flow of information is presented to all the planning board meetings to the staff and how that goes along.
No, I've attended multiple planning board meetings. If it
No,
was
that's not what I asked you, ma'am. Ms. Patel, I asked you if you attended a Little Falls planning board meeting.
No, you
Thank you.
did not. You said, you asked me if I attended a planning board meeting. I
No,
said
Let
no.
me rephrase the question. Have you ever
And
attended?
then,
a Little
can I
Falls
please
planning board-
finish? You asked me a question, I want a response. Thank you. You asked me if I attended a planning board meeting. I said no. And then you said, so I don't know how information is provided to the board, how it's processed. And so then I responded, I have attended other planning board meetings. I've been an attorney for applicants, so I know exactly how all of that is done. So I don't see a basis for me not having provided a planning board meeting for my question not to be provided a sufficient answer.
Ms. Patel, is it your suggestion that all planning board members should be experts in traffic and that no lay members should make up a planning board? Because
No.
of course, planning boards are individuals and representatives of the town that are all lay members. Again, some may individually possess professional expert knowledge in particular areas, meaning some planning board members may just happen to be engineers, and some planning board members may happen to be attorneys, or some planning board members may have another professional degree in a certain area. But to say that, how can lay members provide any, or how does an expert report have any credibility when it is being presented to individuals that are not experts in that field? I would tend to agree with you, but in your court theory, is that any different than a jury who is hearing a case? They're all lay individuals who are hearing and assessing the credibility of what is presented and ultimately making a determination based upon the information that they've been provided.
Mayor, that is not what I said. What I had asked was the fact that traffic studies were done on individual projects. How does that accurately represent what traffic is going to be like in Little Falls once the projects are completed? You stated you and the board members reviewed each individual traffic study, and that's fine, as you should, as members of the board. However, I've read those traffic studies and the way that they come to their conclusions are all mathematical theories and algorithms. So how can you tell me that the board took all of those into consideration when determining that each and every applicant should be approved?
Sure. So there's been very little turnover on the planning board in the past handful of years. And as a result, each planning board member would have seen, again, by way of your example, application A, and would have been able to assess what type of impact application A may have. And then they would have subsequently seen application B, and they would have had the ability to say A plus B equals something more than just A and more than just B. Similarly, they can add C and D in each one of those for future applications to the total traffic impact that may result within the municipality. Again, I would agree with you if the person who is reviewing the fifth application, or I should say the fifth traffic study, had never seen 1, 2, 3, or 4, but there's been very little turnover of board members. Most of the board members have seen each and every one of the traffic studies that have been provided. And again, individually would be able to assess what the total impact would have been.
So, Mayor, I'm going to disagree because I'm looking at a traffic study right now. And in coming to their conclusion, they've referenced numerous reports that they rely on, numerous approaches that they use. So how can a planning board make the same determination by saying traffic study A and traffic study B, and then concluding at the planning board hearing for project B that it's going to be the same? Were you able to do the mathematical calculations?
Again, each one of those members saw each of the prior applications. They were able to consider at the time of each future application, the prior applications and the potential impacts that it would have had. For example, if you would have read A and then you read B and then you read C, you are right now independently coming to the conclusion that if the fifth application did not take the first four into consideration, and I would agree with you. I believe that each individual planning board member would similarly agree with you. But just as you have read all of them, they read all of them, and were also independently able to consider the fact that each one of them will have some little bit of added impact to the municipality.
Okay, so I did read all of them, and I have no idea how one can come to that conclusion, seeing as how each study is so specific to that project. For example, Mayor, do you know what?
I think
Wait,
I can
one
help
second.
clarify. You believe that one individual study will have some level of impact, right? Pick any of them. You also believe that the next study will have some additional level of impact somewhere else, maybe entirely in the town, correct? But you believe the culmination of the two of them will have more impact than either one of them individually, correct?
Right, but the level of impact is unknown. You're just assuming, right?
No, I'm assuming we relied upon experts.
No, you didn't, because you don't have an expert study that shows the level impact that traffic will have in Little Falls when all four developments are built and operating at full capacity. There's no study there. It's just assumptions. So it's the same as me saying there's going to be a significant amount of traffic when you combine traffic from project A, B, C, and D. That's all I'm saying. Like, you have said time and time again that there's been multiple studies done. I agree. None of them prove exactly what you're saying, because the basis from which those studies are done isn't a complete.
So I understand that that is your lay opinion, that there will be additional traffic in Little Falls. Again, I don't.
And I believe it is your lay opinion that there isn't going to be. But moving on, I just had a question about the 80 Patterson Ave project.
Go ahead.
So the applicant required 275 parking spots. They were deficient after a 10% waiver plus the charging stations. They were deficient 72 spots. Do you recall that?
Yes.
Okay. So pursuant to the township ordinance, applicants can receive that 10% waiver if the board by resolution agrees in its sole discretion, granted, that it has access supply of available on or off-street parking in that area of the development project. In the resolution, there's no mention of you agreeing to that or making note of that. You simply offer the 10% waiver for parking spots. I just wanted to know why that was.
Sure. And again, this was a meeting that I was at that is certainly made public for your review. There was
I
a
did.
lot of discussion regarding the municipal parking lots in the Morris Canal, as well as the contract that had been signed and has now subsequently been closed on for what it was known as the PNC parking lot, which is now municipal parking, in addition to, and don't quote me on this number, but I believe it was in excess of about 45 or 50 additional spaces that would be created by the developer along Patterson Ave and within the entrance to the Morris Canal parking lot that do not currently exist. And again, there was a lot of discussion about all of those additional spaces, as well as the pileup that would be required by the developer as a result of this deficiency. So there was certainly a lot of consideration given to those exact factors.
Mayor, just for clarification, you just said the PNC parking lot, that was just approved?
No, the contract to purchase the PNC lot was signed 4 or 5 years ago. The closing on the lot itself actually occurred just a couple of months ago. But the contract to purchase the lot had been signed many years ago.
And then with those deficient 72 spots, right? We do have the paid in lieu of parking pilot. The resolution states that it was the granting of the application was contingent on the applicant entering into the paid in lieu of parking pilot as set forth in the redevelopment plan. I didn't find any information on that. And I was just wondering what occurred with that, because pursuant to that ordinance, for every deficient spot, the town would be owed $5,000, right? So if you were looking at the 72 spots, that's about $360,000.
Correct.
So I didn't know what had occurred, if you could shed some light on it, if they entered into the paid in lieu.
The project is still awaiting final approval at the county level. But the applicant is going to either make a payment in lieu of parking in the amount of $360,000, or will be making an improvement to something in the immediate vicinity of this project in the amount of at least $360,000 to certainly, make this entire payment and make the municipality whole. The reason that the applicant may be required to make an improvement that is around the cost of $360,000 is because what would actually happen is if the municipality was required to make a similar improvement ourselves, the cost, because of, again, it being a municipal job, would be far in excess of that price tag. So we may be able to receive more work for less funds if the applicant makes an improvement to the tune of $360,000 themselves.
Okay, well, look forward to having more information on that. Thank you, Mayor and Council.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us this evening. The floor is open. Would anyone from the audience like to approach the podium? Mr. Kusia, anyone from the chat room would like to approach? Seeing no one else come forward. Sure. Good evening.
Faith, Chloe, I live at the mill. I just have two questions, pretty simple. We all received this flyer. I just want it for the record confirmed, or I would like to know if you all agree with the statement. Just for the record. Just from Tanya, Al, and Chris.
We're not going to discuss political ads at this meeting, ma'am.
Okay, but in the flyer, it states that no open spaces, the neighboring towns were sacrificing open spaces to developers. I was wondering if you can tell me what the neighboring towns were?
Discussing flyer.
You went, right. We're
Yeah, well,
not gonna-
this is
we're
not a
gonna- this is not-
political.
we're-
This
we're-
isn't a political
Oh,
debate.
oh,
This is
right.
this is
Yeah.
a township town hall.
we want to, be
It's a
open,
Political debate.
right.
but,
We want to, yes.
Al, I'm not trying to say anything. I'm asking, my next question.
You're asking me about a political flyer. This
Well,
is,
it says
this is
open
township
spaces.
time.
Open spaces. My
Right.
question is in regards to.
I heard your
local
question very
open
clearly.
Spaces.
I heard your question. This is not the appropriate forum
Okay.
to have the conversation about a political flyer. We're on township.
Right.
Were there any open
Property.
spaces in
And-
Little Falls that were developers had requested?
Uh,
How is that a political question?
You're holding a political flyer.
I am
in
no
your hand.
longer holding it. It's in regards to a question. I'm not.
Ma'am, we're not going to take up residents'
Sure.
time.
I can answer the latter portion of your question. Is there any open space in the municipality
That's what the whole point of my.
that developers are looking to develop? Certainly. There is a massive open space right now in Little Falls that developers are looking to develop. It is the Rose Street property. It is a property that has been discussed for development for, at this point, maybe in excess of 20 years, maybe more. It still has not been developed. I do think that there may very well be some appropriate development that may ultimately be able to go there, but I think that would have to happen after or in conjunction with the Army Corps' plans to make that property free or safe from future flooding.
And, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Good.
I was just wanted to know if that will go, is that going to be a generalized email that will go to the town notifying them of what the proposed, what the proposal for that space will be, or?
If there's ever an application that's made to develop the space, I mean, at that point, yeah, appropriate postings would need to be made for any sort of application before the planning or zoning boards here in Little Falls. Right now, there's no specific plan for that property whatsoever. But again, that's certainly one of the larger remaining open spaces that we have here in the municipality that could theoretically be developed on.
That was my only question.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Just recently at the planning board, a lot was subdivided on Wilmore Road. And that lot was publicized. It goes through the natural channels. And for those residents, some residents came along to that planning board meeting, had some questions. But that's the nature of how these applications go. Okay. Thank you for joining us. Is there anyone in the chat who would like to join us? No. Okay.
Al Antonisi, 27 Dewey Avenue. I have a question of Mr. Kawadi. When that young lady waved the political flyer, you said this is not the time, this is the place. There are other venues to discuss that. Was that what I
No,
heard?
he did not say other venues to discuss that. We're not going to discuss.
He did say that.
Okay, sir, we're not
Don't be
discussing.
strike it
He
back.
did not say,
said
we're
that.
we're not discussing political rhetoric.
All right, fine. Were you here last? town
And by
hall?
the way, no one's raising their voice.
Were you here at the last town hall meeting?
I think you know the answer to that. We were both here.
I was too.
I said that.
Wasn't a question brought up with regard to pilot programs and taxes being brought into this town
Yes,
by Mr. Fernandez, I believe?
okay.
Correct. All right. That being the case, since the question was raised at the last town hall meeting, I have a question regarding a pilot program and the Signac project. At that last town hall meeting, it was stated that the town will receive approximately $1.3 million in taxes. Do you agree with
You
that?
haven't asked me anything.
Do you agree with that? I'm asking you
Yeah,
now.
oh, absolutely.
Ms. Downey, do you have a question?
Yes, I
Yeah,
do.
Okay, well, can we get to the
Very,
question,
very
sir?
Simple question.
I'm waiting for it.
Very
Thank you.
simple.
Anytime you're ready.
When the pilot program was approved for the Signac project, you voted yes on that. I know you did. It's not a question, it's a fact. That being the case, I would like the answer to this question. If my house is worth $600,000 and I pay a regular tax minus the pilot, is it not a fact that the individual who is just moving into a comparable townhouse will be paying substantially less? And if so, by how much?
Mr. Atney,
I'm not asking you the question.
it's okay, sir.
Excuse me.
Sir,
I'm
listen,
asking it, I'm
sir,
asking it
no, sir,
of
excuse me one moment.
Mr. Kawadi.
You may do that, but I run the meeting.
You can run it, but you do.
No, I will run
You're
it,
not-
sir.
you're
No,
not-
listen to what I'm about to tell you, sir. I will run this meeting,
you're
as
not
I always
giving
have
the
done,
people that
as
are
I always have done, sir.
meeting
could-
an
I'm welcome to that.
opportunity To
Yes.
hear Mr. Kawadi answer the question that was put to him.
Mr. Adams, I think you need some clarity though, because you said the project will bring in $1.3 million.
No, you said it was.
No, that's not what I said.
No.
I said $1.3 million more
More
than
than
that
the
site
old.
previously paid.
All right.
So
I
more
I
than,
accept that. I accept that. Absolutely
I was
correct.
gonna make that correction.
I stand corrected, but my question still holds. How much more will I be paying on a comparable house?
Mr. Atney, you want to give us those figures? I mean, what are you looking for?
So,
I'm looking for an answer.
listen, I'm happy to engage in this with Mr. Atney.
I'm,
What you're really trying to say is what is a pilot?
no,
right?
sir. No,
Oh,
sir.
absolutely.
No, sir. I
You-
know what a pilot is. No,
Oh,
sir. Don't put words in my
If
mouth.
you know what a
No.
pilot is, then you know the answer to that
Unacceptable.
question.
Unacceptable.
Okay,
The
whatever.
question is very
Listen, sir,
straightforward.
listen,
You
let's put the
approve-
grandstanding
you approve
aside.
the pilot,
let's,
review the
let's put-
information. I am asking you a blunt question with regard to comparable
Right.
housing.
I-
How much more will I pay than somebody who just moved into town?
on
That's my
year,
question.
on year 30, you'll pay the same amount.
I didn't ask that question.
Okay.
You know I didn't ask.
I know you didn't. That's
Everybody
right.
here knows I didn't.
I
ask that
know.
question. So give me the answer.
It will be a sliding scale. In year one, that person, oh, you don't want the answer.
I want,
Okay, listen, sir.
no, don't give me the sliding scale.
I will
I
give
asked you a
you
very
the
direct
truest
question.
answer. You don't
How
want to
much
hear it.
more will I be
Oh,
paying
God.
than that person who just moves in?
It will be a sliding scale that begins. Oh,
It's not an answer.
okay, that's fine.
Thank you,
You're
sir.
doing a great
Okay.
job. Let me
Thank you.
I know.
Thank you.
Have a follow-up request. Tomorrow night, we're meeting with the Clifton Health Department. I'd like the record to show that I'm asking the municipal clerk, now that I know who my liaison is, to provide me tomorrow night and everybody else with the last report, that written report, not a phone call to the mayor. I'd like to have a copy of the last report, formal report, that the Clifton Health Department has provided to the Township of Little Falls. I want to make sure that my question is, who is the municipal clerk? Is she here?
She is on the Zoom. Yes.
Okay.
Cynthia Kraus.
So I want to make sure that she understands what I'm asking for. So I'm asking for a simple, now that I know it's the municipal clerk, I know that there are certain kinds of reports taking place. Also know that the township committee apparently hasn't seen them. I'd like to have a copy of the last formal report from the health department to the township of Little Falls. That's my request.
We'll do our best. Thank you, sir. Mr.
Veteran.
Lucia, Mr. Vettery's
Mr. Veteran.
has his hand up. Mr. Vettery, can you hear us?
Yes, Council President, can you hear me?
Yours. Yes, thank you. The floor is yours.
Yeah, good evening, Mayor, Council President, members of the council. I just wanted to take the opportunity to provide a couple updates, which we actually have since the last time I spoke. I'm going to start about Old Town Hall. I reported last time that we are the recipient of a $50,000 grant for the slate roof. That is now out to bid, and we are hoping to get the work done before the cold comes. In addition, we just found out this week that we were the recipient of a $50,000 private funding, in addition to a $10,000 sponsorship from Visions Federal Credit Union. So we're making great progress. As the mayor and council had told us, we don't want any taxpayer money spent on the project, and we heard you loud and clear. And we're so delighted that members of the public, the business community, the State Historic Preservation Office, the county open space have really all rallied. I'm telling you, it's coming to be a beautiful building, and it wouldn't have happened without your vision and leadership. I want to thank you for that. And we're looking forward to a kickoff event. We haven't set the date yet. We're waiting to hear back from a couple of folks, but we'll be in touch with that. And then maybe we'll have the opportunity to even take some folks through the building now that the substantial demolition is concluded. You'll also notice we did just some things to clean up the building as well, and it's already looking nicer, painting and tree pruning, as well as repairing and replacing parts on the fire escape. So it's really coming together nicely. And again, thank you again for the opportunity. Anyone wants any more information, we now, after decades of not having a website, we now have a website, which is littlefallshistory.org. So Mr. Quaddy, hopefully you're happy with the quality of the website. I know you critique these things. So we liked it. We have some information on there, and there's a section about Old Town Hall as well. Just segue.
On behalf of the mayor and council, we're ecstatic that the Historical Society is doing a great job in rejuvenating the old police station. And we all look forward to that project being completed. We know there's quite a lot of work ahead of you, but encouraged by the progress you've made. As I was driving, I saw that you paved Kirk's parking lot. Are you going to be doing more work to the other
So
land that you have in town?
Yeah, the property at Kirk's, they're supposed to be taking down the old pylon sign, which was probably approved back in the 50s. I have no idea, but that will be coming down. It's certainly not in compliance with the current township code. So that's coming out, the planter's coming out. And in the meanwhile, it was paved. The landscapers were there in an effort to continue in the property maintenance of the sites that are pending development so that they look clean and tidy. As I had reported at the last meeting, I met with Councilman Vincenzi over at the gas station site and spoke about that site as well. We're working through the issues on that so that we can continue the improvements on that as we're waiting for development plans to be arrived at. In the meanwhile, we'll have it fixed up in short time.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for
Thank
joining us this evening.
Thank you, everyone.
Is there anyone else that'd like to approach the podium? Yes. Good evening. Good evening.
Murphy. Few things. Last meeting, I came and I asked if any studies were done in regard to the students that may come out of all development done and approved by this administration. The response I received, and I quote, yes, there were substantial studies done. Should I wish to see these studies and reports to Oprah for it? Do you guys recall that?
Yeah.
Would you agree that a report that committees base their decisions off of is incredibly important?
Yes.
So then can someone please explain to me why, when I put in an Oprah request for this report, for this study, asking for any and all studies for all developments done, the response I received from the town was, please be advised that there are no documents responsive to your request.
Studies on the projects that were done as far as the student participation, we have those studies.
There were some.
Yeah, there were absolutely studies. No projects are going to be approved without studies on behalf of how many.
Why wouldn't one be provided?
You know, we'll take a look at that, Mr. Murphy, and get back to you. Find out.
Okay, so I did call in because I was just as confused as you were.
Right, but the projects were not passed without not knowing about how many students possibly would affect the school system.
How many students did they have?
We'd have to, I don't know, sir, at this time. We'd have to go look.
Okay, because I did call the clerk and I was confused just as you were, and she had said she had asked the VA, town planner, the planning board chairman, the superintendent. I believe she said she asked the mayor. I mean, if nobody has a report, where could this report be? I mean, don't you just agree that Oprah reports are incredibly important? They're incredibly important for a decision to be made by a board. Yet when I Oprah for it, I was told to Oprah for it, nothing's there.
We do know, looking at those projects, that the 1 and 2 bedroom units, if I recall, with the information that was given, was not going to relate to hardly any students affecting the school system.
Hardly any students?
Yep, hardly any
Okay.
students. That's correct.
So in my research, one demographic study that I was able to find was done by the Little Falls Public Schools in 2021. Are you guys familiar with this?
I'm not familiar with this, sir. I'm sorry.
I just want to read 2 things out of this study. First of all, this study was done in 2021. It was based off of the potential of 260 non-age restricted units being built in Little Falls. Since then, your administration has approved 200 more. Now we're around 470. I'm taking out 55 plus communities. So around 470 units this administration approved. So this is extremely 200 units less. That's what this report's based off. What this report reads: there is currently a small number of school unhoused students, which means students that don't have seats, in school 2, -26, and school 3, -17. While there is a surplus of seating in school 1, +38. By 2025-2026 school year, 3 years from now, it is anticipated that all 3 schools will have a shortage of seating as enrollments are projected to increase. School 2 is projected to have the largest shortage of seating, -85. So how could this council and this administration sit here and tell me there's no impact, there's no students? I opened for a report, I got no report. The only report I do have says in 3 years, we're gonna have a major shortage.
Sir, does that report take into consideration the state mandated pre-K?
Nope. Well, state mandated pre-K, it may, but that's school 2. There's school 1 and school 3 that are both gonna have shortages. So let's just take that out. We're still at shortages.
So what are you doing about it?
In schools?
You're on the Board of Ed.
Sure, great question. We're gonna have to referendum for more money because of decisions you're making. That's what we're gonna have to do.
But
No,
you've indicated the shortage currently exists, does it not?
Shortage is happening now.
This report states there is unhoused students, shortage of seats, correct? Minus 26 and 17.
Currently,
Plus 38.
correct, Mr. Murphy?
Current.
Currently.
Correct.
So why are there unhoused students in any of the schools currently?
Say that again, I'm sorry.
Why are there any unhoused students in any of the schools currently?
Why are there unhoused?
Correct.
You could sit, so on that small number, and again, you're taking it to pre-K on that 26, which that's what we desperately need. On the other one, you're looking at 17. Enrollments are not at that full number, what this would be based off of.
Total development in town has added 4 children to the schools in the past 5 years. There's
So
still shortages
off-
within our
off of
schools.
How many?
Out of all of the recent developments that have
How many
occurred,
units were that?
I believe it's 108 units
Okay, when were those units built and occupied?
within the past 5 years.
In the past 5. In those 5 years, we were named blue ribbon school districts. We were named.
Excuse me, what does this have to do with the shortage of seats in any schools?
I'm not-
You're
I'm-
indicating that
I'm
there's
not talking- I'm
currently-
not talking about any of that. You're talking about, right now, there's 4 students out of the 100 and something developments you just, units you just brought up.
Correct.
I'm answering that question. Since then, we've been named blue ribbon. Since then, we were on the patch.com's top schools. Our teachers are rated top. And you agreed with me last meeting. When parents look for a school, a district to move to, a town to move to, they look at the school district.
You've indicated that there is a current shortage in the seats within our
Right
schools.
now, we are not, I just said to you, right now, in regard to those numbers,
Mhm.
we are not in a shortage because that is taking into.
You indicated there is a current shortage in each of the schools. Excuse me, not at school one.
No, there's plus 35. I'm going to give you a copy of this report because I have it right here. I'll give this to you and you can look at this as well. It's a 60-page report. So there's all prior to that. I'm reading you a little bit snippet, the projection of 2025 to 2026.
But what is the
Current
current?
statistic that you're stating right now, there's build up to that. You're looking at pre-K enrollments and there's projection to it. It's talk about a little bit of a sliding going on here. Again, there's a lot taken into consideration here. And there's some things that is respective on that, but those in school 2 and school 3 right now, we are able to maintain at those numbers. This is stating a significant 160 more.
I will tell you this, and Ms. Patel, I think, agreed previously that those reports are not necessary, or depends on who has a report prepared. And the reason I raise that is because statistically, here in Little Falls, in the 108 or so units that have been developed, there's probably about 250 bedrooms or so, because a number of them are 2 bedrooms, a number of them are 3 bedrooms. Of those 250 or so bedrooms, 4 children have been added to our schools. I am using actual Little Falls data and information to project what we could expect in our schools. I have said, and I will continue to say, that here in Little Falls, somebody who is paying $500,000 to $600,000 for the development or the unit that they will be residing in, it is highly, highly unlikely that they will have children, because if they were spending $500,000 or $600,000 and they had kids, they would more likely buy a single-family home that has a yard and the amenities of a single-family home. The developments that are going up here are not targeted to adding children to the schools, and that's based upon actual relevant Little Falls statistical data.
That's, again, I'm going to go off, that's an assumption that a parent is not going to buy a $500 townhome.
No, that's
What
actually
if-
4 students in about 250 bedrooms.
Okay. Now it's okay. So 250 bedrooms, you're using different versus units.
I said of the about
what you're
108
saying.
total units that have been developed,
Okay.
there's been about 250 bedrooms in those that have resulted in 4 students in our schools.
And you don't think blue ribbon districts, you don't think us getting a lot of press on how good our schools are doing, you don't think COVID, you don't think these increase in these units over here where people are moving from cities that are used to being in townhomes and apartments, you don't think that has any impact on any of this?
We've been in COVID. We've been for 2.5 years now.
Nothing has been built. This is all new.
Incorrect. There's been a number of units that have gone on the market within these past 2.5 years. There's been 50 units at the Abbey that have been developed during that time.
Okay, that was prior to that. When was Abbey developed and built and occupied?
It was completed within the past 2.5 years.
Okay, and since then, a lot has happened. That's what I'm trying to make to you. There's been a lot of changes in our schools, with COVID prior to that.
Blue Ribbon and Lighthouse has existed. Again, I
I'll
guess
give you a copy of this.
the point here is that the argument you are making about a report is the exact same argument, except to the contrary that Ms. Patel was previously making about a report. And that is that reports are prepared with whoever the applicant having it prepared for, usually skewed in their favor.
So in Little Falls Township Public Schools and outside statistical forecasting,
Sure.
you would say that's accurate.
I would say that it could be,
Was a developer who stands to gain a lot of money. I think that's what she's referring to. This
I-
is completely different.
I would say that a report, if you ask for it to be prepared in a conservative fashion, may very well be. A report that you ask be prepared in an aggressive fashion may very well be.
What would the schools look to gain from that?
To ensure that there's additional information to support the fact that there may be additional children that need to be housed.
There's no benefit for the school to tell a reporter or a forecaster to do that at all.
Wasn't it just your position that the schools need additional funding to house all of these kids?
No, I did not say that. He asked me a question. Councilman Kawadi asked.
Well,
me
I
a
asked
question.
what you were going to do about these new students. Your answer was you were putting
If
forth a,
we have that
wait, hold
amount
on.
of students, we would
Hold
have
on.
to build.
Right, but the referendum that you put forth in the spring had no additional classroom space except for
Incorrect.
pre-K.
Pre-K.
If you let me finish, it won't be incorrect,
Okay.
except for the pre-K. So you put forth a $35 million referendum that didn't account for what you're talking about right now in your own words.
Correct, because it added space.
It didn't add classroom space.
It added pre-K spaces.
It
which then
didn't
took
add
up-
classroom space that's not pre-K. For the purposes of this discussion, let's make everybody's life easy.
Sure.
Let's assume the pre-K is off the table, because we all know that that's a different animal regards to what you're talking about with the development. It's state mandated pre-K. You obviously, school two obviously would not have the space for it because you're adding two age groups to the school, right? So for the purposes of this conversation, we can agree that we're not talking about the mandated pre-K. What I am talking about is the $30 million referendum that was put forth that you're telling me there are projections that say there's not enough classroom space, but you didn't, and you were on the committee and you didn't put in any additional classroom space into that referendum. But your answer to me just now was the referendum was the solution to the issue.
Two things to that. One, we have not seen this increase that they're projecting. So we had no reason to look at that. I did not see this. The first time I saw this and really looked at this was up until a few weeks ago. Okay. This report I did not know about. That's number one.
When was it submitted to the board?
2021.
21.
Why didn't you know about it? You're on the board.
I have no clue. I have no clue what this is done by.
Well, we agree on that.
Okay. There's reports that you didn't know about the thing you signed tonight.
I
You
know
know about-
exactly
nobody
what.
read that.
And you know,
I
Mr. President,
exactly what I-
I'm going to help.
Mr. Atkins decided
I'm
not
gonna-
to let me answer.
I'm going to help clarify. The
was
Clifton Health
prepared for that.
Department contract has not been signed yet. It's still under attorney review. So there are still revisions to that contract that can and will be made to ensure that it's in conformity.
Okay. Right. And a contract is significantly more important than a study. My second response to that.
Correct. So it's going to be corrected.
Okay, right, exactly. So my second response to that question is you add space and you could add classrooms, not necessarily with the classroom, right? At school 3, we did a room that could encompass 20, 30 students. You could teach out of that. It's not particularly a classroom. It was going for a auditorium. You could do classes out of there. So while you're saying that, yes, you could do significant large rooms, large classroom settings in those. So that is not entirely correct.
Every presentation that was made, the answer was there was no additional classroom space added except for the.
Those rooms, right? If you want to call them classrooms, but those rooms, the rooms that were being built can be utilized for
So your
teaching.
plan is to have classrooms in the auditorium, classes in the auditorium? Is that what you're suggesting?
First of all, I'm not speaking on behalf of the Board of Education. I'm just going to say that, number one. Number two,
Well, you
No,
were on
and
the
it's
committee
not-
that put together the referendum.
of course you could do a classroom in an.
No, but is that your plan? Is your plan to have fifth grade classes in the auditorium?
Why wouldn't you be able to? Or Sig Valley does it all the time.
Why,
Dance classes, any classes.
I guess you're misunderstanding my question. You're talking about a deficiency in classroom space that's coming down the pipe. According to the report, you're literally waving at.
Correct.
I'm asking you if you have a plan to address that. You're telling me that your plan to address that is to have classrooms in the auditorium? Because we've
not
never
saying
heard that.
I'm not
I think
saying
you
that's the
literally
plan.
said that.
I'm saying to you, they could be utilized for that.
Is that the plan
No, it is
to
not. the-
address? So what is your plan to address the issue in the report that you literally just waved at us?
That is something we're going to have to address. And
So you don't have a
this
plan for
report.
that?
Board of Ed meeting tomorrow night. I'll bring it up. I have not been to a meeting since I saw this report, so that's something I'm gonna have to look at. But that is something in that report that has to be brought to this committee. I have no clue what this report was. So that's something that to take serious. I don't know why we're.
Mr. Murphy, it's your position that the schools had a report prepared in 2021. Months and months and months later, put forth a referendum that discounted and did not take into consideration whatsoever the report, or if they did, they are encouraging a potential shortfall in the future. Now, I say that tongue in cheek because I don't believe that to be the case. I believe that the administration at the schools is far too sharp to have let a 150 student deficit occur when putting forth a referendum requesting that taxpayers put additions on the schools. So the point is this, that report, in my opinion, just based upon what you said here tonight, isn't worth the paper it's written on, because there's no way the administration at the schools decided it's okay. We can allow an additional shortfall in seating without taking it into consideration after going out for a referendum.
Okay, I can make that same argument with traffic. So just with any study, exactly what you're saying.
I agree with you. And I never took any of the traffic studies on their face and believed word for word what any developer was putting forward. So the fact of the matter is, if they said it would have minimal impact between these hours, I would always consider there being potential for far more impact than what they had set forth. And I still took that into consideration when any approvals were at least given by me. And I'm sure all the other planning board members would have done similarly.
And I'd like to follow up, Mayor. The point is not that you should be building additional classrooms. I want to be very clear about that. I don't think that that's the case. Okay? I actually don't think that the referendum was intended to accommodate an influx of students, because the fact of the matter is, I don't think anybody believes there will be an influx of students, because the developments that we've seen in the past that were similar in nature that have recently opened up did not bring an influx of students. So there isn't going to be an influx of students that you or the Board of Ed will have to address, because these types of developments don't tend to bring that.
Councilman, I believe there has been a major influx of
Yeah,
students
That was
to
my-
our Little Falls school
and I was
over the past 5 years.
Yes.
A major influx,
absolutely,
but not as a result
Right.
of the developments that have been built.
and
It's because our schools are blue ribbon. It's because we're Lighthouse District.
right,
Right,
It's
our schools
because
are
of the high
phenomenal. I
ratings.
agree with
These schools are outstanding.
right.
And people are flocking to Little Falls for the schools. Except, again, we have confirmation that in the 250 bedrooms that have recently been developed, we have 4 kids in them.
Right.
So that is not the type of residential living that these kids are coming to Little Falls for. So again, statistically, I don't disagree with you. There's been a major influx. When I went to school here, now it's it seems like a lot of years ago, not that many years ago though, compared to many others. School 3 wasn't even open. School 2 and School 1 were the only 2 schools open. Was it the same? No, it was open during your time here.
Yeah.
It had just opened during your time here. So the fact of the matter is, and that's decades before any of this development was considered. The fact of the matter is, the number of children in Little Falls has dramatically increased, especially in the past 5 years, but not because of any of the new development.
Right. And I was going to follow up and say, and if there was any connection between new development and an influx of students, I'm sure that when you were holding the report up, you would have mentioned that.
Say that again?
If there was any connection between an increase in number of students that's projected and the new development that's coming in, if there was any connection made in that report, I'm confident that you would have mentioned that already.
No, this is projecting 25, 26. That was.
I understand that.
Thank you. I'm not looking for the prior. That's not what I was bringing up. I hope you guys are correct in what you're saying, that there's not gonna be, trust me, I don't want influx either. I would prefer it to stay small. That's why I'm bringing this up. I hope you're 1000% right, honestly,
We don't see it.
right.
Mike,
I
look
hope-
around the town. I hope you don't mind me calling.
Okay.
Look around the town. Look at the 1 and 2 bedroom apartments that have come online. Look at the townhouses that have come online. This information is just as available to you as it is to us. Okay? The people are not moving into Little Falls with children into those residences. The idea that people are going to suddenly start changing their behavior, it only suits one purpose, and that's political divisiveness. But there isn't any evidence to show it in any of the developments that we've already seen. The information is available to you. That's how we know there's only 4 students that have come online in the townhouses and apartments that have already opened up.
I hope, honestly, God, I really hope you're right.
Well, of course.
But thank you, I appreciate
I do
it.
too, because
Thank
my
you,
kid
John.
won't have a seat in school if I'm wrong.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Murphy, for joining us. Is there anyone,
Mayor Seaver,
Uh,
Mayor Sheber.
Mayor, yeah, the floor is yours, sir. You have to wait, Mr. Adams. Mr. Seaver, can you hear us?
Ask him to unmute. so-
Mr. Seaver, can you unmute yourself? sir?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, Mr. Seaver, the floor is
Okay.
yours. Your name, please?
Sam Sheber,
Good, good evening.
181 Long Hill Road,
Good evening.
Little Falls. I'm listening to, I'm all hearing is double talk. I don't hear anything specifically addressing the question. When Mr. Antonisi came up, he asked about a Board of Health. Is there a Board of Health named in the contract? I don't want the mayor says they can call me on the, what, he represents all the boards, then put himself down as mayor and also Board of Health.
Mr. Sheber, as I indicated, the contract is not completed yet. It is undergoing attorney review and will have these exact modifications made to it.
I thought it was
Final
signed. It wasn't
ratification.
signed? Was it signed? I thought it was signed.
No, the new contract has not been signed.
It said was signed as of June 1st, as of July 31st. Okay, then I would suggest you put a Board of Health. You should have somebody, just like you have people reporting about how great everything is going in by the ball field and the other things. You're getting a report all the time. You should have somebody giving a report on a Board of Health. That's vital to the people. Secondly, it just seems that every time somebody comes up here, it's an argument. Nobody's wrong as far as the township the council is concerned, or maybe slightly. I just heard now you're talking about 20 to 23, 25, whenever it is. You should be looking not only at the present, but at the future. Now, before, when we had the past, what you were saying, we used to have a rent control. You did away with the rent control. You saw you didn't need it anymore. Well, we did it because at the time, people then couldn't get housing. All they had was getting rentals, and they were being gouged. That's why it was put in. Times changed. More people bought houses. You didn't need the rent control.
Mr. Sheber, if I may, we still have rent control here in Little Falls.
Well, then Mr. Damiano, then I'm not so old, am I? 50 years ago, you had rent control. Still have it, don't you?
Correct.
You make modifications on it. 50 years ago, we had lights on the ball field. You used them, you make modifications on it. 50 years ago, we inaugurated with Montclair State to use their swimming pool, their library, and their meeting rooms. You have that yet today. So things that were done in the past are still, some are good present, and they can be modified and increased. So don't disparage anything anybody says, but that's all you seem to be doing. Now, as far as the traffic, I went to the planning board meeting. There was no traffic study on Center Avenue. I asked that specific question there. They said, no, it's urban. It was under the pilot. They didn't have to have a traffic study.
Mr. Schieber, can I ask
Traffic-
what property you're referring to?
What, Center Avenue,
Not under a pilot.
the bank.
There's no pilot on Center Ave. Are you referring to the Abbey property?
He said that according to them, it was an urban property, and he didn't need a traffic study. And you guys bought it. I don't know what the hell it was all about.
Mr. Schieber, are you referring to the Abbey property?
The bank. Is that the Abbey property?
No, the Valley property. Okay, now I understand what property you're referring to.
Okay,
On that property, the number of units that were being developed there
yeah.
were being built as of right.
Didn't
There was
say
no
that. I
variance
asked
sought
about
for
a
the number of
traffic
units.
study. Traffic study. Was there a traffic study done there?
No, there was no need in the sense for a traffic study because the property was built as of right for the number of units. The developer.
That doesn't matter if it's built as of right. You can always, what do you call it, change certain things.
Mayor, it
If a
certainly
person-
matters if something's being built as of right, because whether it would increase traffic or not,
I'm not
by any
talking-
noticeable margin, the board has little to no authority over whether or not it
look,
increases the
look.
units.
You can modify anything that comes before the board, or you can say something. There's properties that have been zoned that you rezoned. Master.
And that's another thing that I agree with you on, that property was zoned for the exact type of development that went in there. And that zoning that it was zoned for was actually approved in 2016, prior to me even becoming mayor. That was approved for that exact type of zoning by the prior administration. And again, as a result of that, the property, the density was built as of right on that particular property.
Right, but the density might have been, was there a traffic study done? You're saying everything was done, traffic study. You're doing it now. Your planning board heard it now. Your responsibility.
But Mr. Schieber, if the traffic study said traffic at that intersection would have been, increased dramatically. There
I
was.
didn't say- I
And
didn't
yes,
say
we don't
that.
have that, but even if that's what it said, there was nothing that could have been done about that particular density on that
Oh, no.
site because there was no variance sought for the number of units being built.
Look, you're trying to tell me, I asked them, did they check with the police? Police were never even notified. They could have told you that it's tough pulling in and out of that property. There could have been said something, you can have one less store, or you're gonna have to widen it. You're ignoring property now. You can't even, the street's too narrow. But don't say there's a traffic study was done on everything. Not all the developments, regardless. So that's double talk. That's double talk. There was none. Same as the double talk is how many units have been occupied since you've been mayor. No, that's double talk. It's how many have been approved. Now the parking lot,
Mayor, if I may, when somebody says that the total number of units that have been approved have caused traffic in Little Falls, when almost the entirety of them are vacant, that is not double talk. A vacant unit is not.
double
traffic
talk,
in Little Falls.
double talk was when you said there was only 4 or 20-something units in your administration that have been occupied.
Correct. 40 have been approved and
You
occupied.
did, no, approved and occupied. Double talk. How many, if 100 units were approved and 25 have been moved in, you're gonna say that you're only responsible for 25? No.
Mayor, what I'm going to say is that the
Look, I'm not-
400
look.
units that have been approved but have not been developed have certainly not added to the traffic in Little Falls.
Look, I'm not talking, I'm addressing.
That's what the argument was, Mayor. The argument was that these units have created traffic in Little Falls.
No, they
With
have,
respect to the traffic in Little Falls, I will stand here and vehemently deny that an unoccupied unit has created traffic in Little Falls.
What I'm saying is you said that every development had a, what do you call it, traffic study. Not everyone does. Not everyone did. Okay? That was a falsehood. When you're talking about traffic, I'll go back. I don't know how much it's going to increase traffic, but it's going to have an effect on traffic. I don't want to hear this 46 is creating the traffic in Little Falls. The traffic was always in Little Falls before 46 got congested. If they cut off into Little Falls, where did they go?
So Mayor, you further.
They got to go
confirmed my
back on
point
46?
That none of the development has created traffic if it has always existed here in Little Falls.
That's
this way
what
without Route
well,
46.
that's what I'm saying. You're talking apples and oranges. I didn't say it would increase. Did I say that? Did I say it would increase?
Mayor, no, you just said that there's always been traffic here in Little Falls.
Always been. Yes. Go down to Singac and ask them, well, this is before your time. You were just maybe a baby. Traffic along 23 coming into Little Falls, especially during the holidays, always jammed. And you can go all the way back. You know, you always complained about that.
Mayor, I agree, and the DOT has changed the roadway in that area. Probably, I could probably say much to my displeasure, and much to the police department's displeasure, because there's been an increase in accidents there. But the DOT agreed with you, so much so that they changed the line striping and the traffic pattern. And I think possibly during your time, or maybe just after, the intersection at Four Corners was completely revamped as a result of the traffic in that area.
No, you got to do more for there. You can't have a bus stop there. But you got the bus stop, that's going to do it. I didn't say it's going to increase. I've never said it was going to increase. What is going
Mayor, do you have a question for us this evening?
Yeah, you're double talking. You're double talking. You don't answer a question. I want to know when the parking lot now in by the bank, PNC Bank, who originally purchased it? It said it was under contract for how many years? Was that before your administration?
No, that was during my administration.
Okay. So it finally closed. That's good. Did you get an appraisal on it?
We did indeed. The township had one and the bank had one.
Township so the township, you did get an appraisal. Township got an appraisal. That's you.
That's correct.
Okay. That's all I want to know.
And
Now,
we purchased it for about 50% of the appraised price.
Pardon?
And we purchased it for about 50% of the appraised price.
That's fine. That's fine. I had the previous administration that wanted to buy something that made them take an appraisal and it was 50% less. So that's why you should get an appraisal, which is good. You did your good deal. I'm not criticizing. You're taking everything as criticism.
No, sir, I don't think it's criticism. I'm simply answering whatever questions you may have.
That's it. I asked you that question. And you, what do you call it? You haven't, you're saying that what they're saying is something happening in 23, 25. That's what you're supposed to be looking for currently. Now, the only thing I know that Mr. Antonisi asked you about the taxes. Have you been seeing the rentals, not the rentals, the advertisements for the sale?
I'm sorry, sir, what are you referring to?
Have you seen the advertisements for the sale of the townhouses?
Yes,
What do they project on the taxes?
I can tell you, I believe that the current townhomes are paying
On 600,000, how much are they paying?
Mr. Albanese, please don't come.
about
No,
$15,000 a year.
Please don't do that.
Where is that?
$15,000 a year.
How much?
About $13,000 to $15,000 a year.
Is that from the advertisement from Lanier to sell the houses? Then you better correct them. They're saying it's 4,000, 4,100, 4,600.
That's certainly, that may, I haven't seen yet. If that's what the advertisement is saying.
Yes, that's what I'm trying to tell you. You're getting confused on.
If that's what I haven't seen the advertisement, but if that's what it says, it's certainly incorrect.
Well, I will tell you to stop it. Otherwise, you're going to say you're talking through your,
It's not,
It does.
sir, I'm not the property owner. I'm not this.
no. If you're
That's
saying,
like saying I should stop, any home from listing on their multiple listing that they pay $1,000 a year in taxes. I have no authority over what somebody advertises.
well, why don't we make a correction? Make a correction. You're going to have people telling you, just like Mr. Antonisi.
But Mayor, that's not the municipality's advertisement. That's a private property owner.
Everything is private. Okay, so I'm private and I'm telling you something. Would you would advertise it or say I'm right or I'm wrong? You use it?
Sir, I haven't seen the advertisement that you're referring to.
Well, why don't you look up the advertisement and then make a statement to the public that whatever is being advertised is the wrong taxes? I'm trying to help you.
Look at that,
You're trying
and
to-
certainly, I'm happy
to help you,
certainly happy to
you know.
look at it.
Huh? I'm trying to help you.
I appreciate it. I'll certainly take a look at that.
Okay. Anything else you want to berate me about?
Mayor, I'm simply answering the questions that you're asking. I don't.
Okay, yeah. And I'm glad that you make me say my name and my address when you let somebody else that you don't know me. You tried to put me down the last meeting when you made me say my name and my address, but you let Mr. Antonisi, you let Mr. Burris, you just say you don't have to introduce yourself. We know you. So I'm glad that you made me say it. You made me say how old I am practically to make me look outdated. When you're a bunch of kids and you don't know what the hell you're doing on certain things, you're taking credit for a lot of things and you're making mistakes on a lot of things. And if people are saying, correct the mistakes, you take it as an insult. And when where's your 100 pictures of the project that you just made? Why do you just show one building? Why don't you show the whole street? Doesn't look good, the whole street.
You have any other comments, Mr. Shiva?
Yeah, one other comment. You couldn't see any buildings on an industrial property from the street. There was a fence around it. And you talked about rats. Why didn't you do anything about the rats? You're talking how bad everything was, and yet you didn't do anything for it. So all you do is say how bad and what you're correcting, and you're correcting it, and you're trying to take credit for things that you're exaggerating on.
Mr. Shiva, again, there were certainly action taken regarding the rodents in the area. There were a number of traps and bait that was placed out in the area. Again, so I disagree with that statement.
You disagree, okay. I didn't hear, were the neighbors satisfied? Or you didn't hear from neighbors?
We certainly heard from a lot of the neighbors during the planning board meetings. There were a number of neighbors that had attended.
Yeah. What caused the rats?
There was a
Yeah, the catering.
sure, there was a
catering.
food distribution area business there.
Food
Rainbow Burgers.
distribution was the catering trucks.
Correct.
That's all they were. Okay, not food distribution. Sounds like there's a factory there. You show a bathroom, 100 pictures of the property, one showing a bathroom in the back. Come on. Be truthful to the people. Show them what you're doing, show them why you're doing, and show them what it looks like. Don't take a picture straight on of a complex. And if you look at it from the street, it looks like you're seeing a penitentiary all the way down the street. This is what you're being criticized, not for the apartments. It's the way they look and where they're put. That's all. That's it.
Thank you,
Thank
sir.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, we're gonna move to the floor. We're gonna move, I understand, but we're gonna go back and forth. Ms. Patello, just please wait. Mr. Albanese,
I'll be very brief.
that's fine. Floor is yours.
Mr. Mayor, did I hear you say when you're speaking to Mr. Murphy, that based on the information you have, 2 to 3 bedroom apartments, 240 brought in 4 kids, new kids into the, our school system.
About that many bedrooms, correct?
About 250 bedrooms equal 4.
Correct.
New children. I've also read very recently, but I won't say where I read it because this is not a political statement or venue for a political statement, that there would be 1 child per 100 bedrooms. So which should the people of Little Falls believe? The 240 equals 4 or the 100 equals 1?
Sure, that's a great question.
Thank you.
And the development that is also included in the calculations, there were also 24 single-family homes that I'm not including in my total number of bedrooms. That would increase it to about the 100 per 1.
100.
There's about 1 student per 100 bedrooms that have, since, over the past 4 or 5 years,
How many total bedrooms in the?
there's been about
single flat?
400 developed.
400.
Again, a number of those include single-family homes.
I'm just, I just asked a question about.
About
thank you.
400.
Yeah, okay, good. I mentioned something about the pilot program.
Sure.
And you had given an explanation as to the whys and wherefores, and I buy that. I understand why developers need that in certain situations. My question is that, Mr. K and V, are they looking for a pilot project with their Main Street project?
I will tell you that every developer is always looking for a pilot, but the municipality is only giving pilots when they're absolutely necessary.
And as I recall, the rationale that you used, and which I fully agree with, is sometimes you have to do it
Correct,
to bring a developer in.
correct. If your question is about Patterson, I guess,
Patterson Ave.
which Patterson, Ave? Yeah, there is
Patterson
no
Ave.
pilot on Patterson Ave.
Very good. The last thing is that, going back to you, Mr. Quaddi, you have a unique way of turning questions, asking people questions about what they said. Specifically this evening, you asked Mr. Murphy why, if he was on the Board of Education for this town, he wasn't, hadn't seen that report before and was just bringing it up now. Might be a valid question, but I wonder how come when I asked you the question with regard to the amount of money being paid vis-a-vis me and somebody new, something that you approved, you said, yes, I'm all for it on the pilot project, and why didn't you read it? When I asked you that.
I don't understand why you're saying I didn't read something.
Oh, then why didn't you give me the answer? Oh, you didn't understand it? I don't know. Why can't you answer the question? Don't turn it around to somebody else if you don't like it gets.
This is why I didn't give you an answer, because every time I tried to answer, you interrupted me.
You never.
And then you walked away.
You
And so
never
I let
give an
you walk away.
Give me an answer. Can you give me an answer?
What's the answer? What's the
What's
question?
the answer? No, I'm asking
No,
you.
oh my God.
How much? How much are they gonna pay more? How much am I?
They're not going to pay more.
How much am I gonna pay more?
In year 1?
I didn't ask you that.
Oh my God, sir.
How much am I gonna pay?
Mr. Adney,
Year one,
Mr.
year
Adney,
one.
In year one,
Yeah.
the pilot allows for them to pay 25% less.
25%.
Yeah, now when I voted on the project, the properties weren't assessed at the time. So I don't know what the assessed value of the property was, because you can't know that until it's built and times goes by and real estate.
How can you say 25% of their assessed value? But it's not their assessed value,
No,
right?
it's,
They're not fully assessed until year 30, correct?
Incorrect. They are
No,
fully assessed
They're fully
immediately.
assessed, but they're not paying fully assessed.
that's right.
They pay
That's what I just
75%.
They're
said.
saying they're paying 25% less than somebody.
But sir, what you have to take into
the-
consideration is
Right,
the county only gets 5%. So the taxpayers of Little Falls make out
Right.
better with a pilot than they would without.
Can I ask you something, James? You brought up something about when Sam mentioned something about the ads. I happen to see the same ads, right? You said 15,000. Where were you getting that figure from?
Because if the assessed value of the property is $550,000 roughly, I'll do the math for you right now. $550,000, and Mr. Cucci, our current tax rate is times 0.03.
Two,
26? 26, that's what I thought. That would be $17,930 on a full assessment. At 75% of that, they're paying $13,447.50 on one that sold at $550. Many of them are being sold for in excess of $550.
Now, yes, but, excuse me, I'm not too good with math. But explain that again to me.
Yeah, unfortunately, I have a weird mind with math and it happens too quickly. Sure. So the assessed value of those properties, if it is assessed at $550, which I believe is one of the lower purchase prices,
I'm with you.
they are, if a new individual comes into Little Falls and buys a townhome for $550,000, that's what it's assessed at.
No, it isn't.
Don't, please, not from the audience.
I'm listening then.
Okay, so assuming that's the assessment, which is the purchase price, because the market clearly indicates that the assessed value of the property. Now, they will be assessed, but generally speaking, a new purchase on a new building, the assessment of that unit is what the purchase price was. If it is assessed at $550,000, the 100% tax rate, if we take that number, we multiply it by 3.26%, that came to, I believe, I lost the original number here. 550 times 0.03. I'm sorry, 550 times 0.0326 is if it were a home that did not have a pilot, was not part of a redevelopment in this particular area, they would have paid $17,930 in taxes. But because they are part of the pilot, those individuals will pay times 0.75, 75% of that, which is $13,447.50. So those townhomes will be paying between 13.5-ish and more for the ones that are going to be selling for $650, et cetera.
33 and.
Correct. So those will pay even more than this 13.5 rough number that I'm providing to you. So they will all, so if you saw something that indicates they pay $4,000 a year, which again, wait, if
I'd
that
like
exists,
that.
no. Have you seen that though? Because I have
Yes,
not.
I have.
Okay, so
know
I had no
exactly.
knowledge of that. I can tell you that that is absolutely not accurate. If that's what they are advertising, they're not being entirely truthful in what it is if they say their taxes are $4,000 a year.
So I thank you for your answer. It's just too bad that Mr. Kawadi didn't have the same information that you did.
But see, there's right. The problem is too, the question was, again, somewhat ambiguous because he's right. Over time, that number will increase to the 100% mark.
That
Over
wasn't
time.
my question,
I-
James. You answered my question. I just said, it's unfortunate that Mr. Kawadi didn't have the same information that you had.
I
and
would
that
have
you
been
are giving
happy
me
to
now.
share that information.
Okay, thank
with
you. All right, thank you.
Even with your smirky face at me, I would have been happy to share that information with
Ms.
you.
Vitale, you have,
Had you been capable of hearing an answer that was more than one sentence long?
Ms. Patel, you have the floor.
You can do that all day, sir.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
Now,
you.
The question that
Right.
your political
We
boss
have-
told you to ask, then you shouldn't ask it.
Ms. Patel, you have the floor.
Thank you. Just a few things. Mayor, thank you for deferring to my argument and acknowledging that's solid. However, all I think you did was contradict yourself. Because when I was talking about traffic studies, you depended on them to forward your argument that there will be little to no traffic. However, when presented with the study that you were unaware of, you said that studies are unreliable. So
No,
honestly,
no,
which one is it?
No, if I may, that's incorrect. You did not quote what I just said. What I said is that the traffic studies indicated one thing. I gave them what I believe to be the appropriate weight and oftentimes considered that there would actually be more traffic than was presented within the traffic study by that applicant's expert. So I gave them some weight, but again, only some. I then applied my own thought and belief to that and assumed that each one of them was somewhat underestimating the amount of traffic impact that it would have.
Well, Mayor, that's the first time we're hearing any of this, seeing as how when previously asked about traffic, all you deferred to were the studies that were completed. So again, a little confusing, unsure as to where we're going, but that's fine. If you do believe a study, you don't believe a study. The point is, significant studies might have been done, but not relevant studies that allow the township to know what impact the projects are going to have on the schools and traffic. We are not stated, as you previously said, that we're blaming the fact that these units are being built, that traffic has increased. No, we're saying once they're built and fully occupied, traffic will increase, and there's nothing to negate that, especially as I pointed out before, that there's been no studies to show what the impact of traffic will be when all projects have been built. Then when it comes to schools, okay, you said there have been 4 students admitted based on the development, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so what development?
On the development that has been constructed over the past 5 or 6 years.
So the Saniac project?
No, there's no units. The first 12 were sold within the past month. School's not even in session. So no, that
Okay.
project has had no impact on the schools whatsoever.
Great, okay, so they've been developed, but how many of the units are occupied?
12.
Okay, so there's 4 students from 12 occupied units.
No, incorrect. There were 34 units developed at 44 Main. There were 24 units developed at Autumn Point. There were 50 units developed at the Abbey. There were 8 more units developed at 750 Main Street. And there are now 12 more units that have been developed so far at the park, again, just in the past month. And I believe that's all of the units that we've seen developed as of lately.
Great, but I'm asking how many of those units are occupied?
All of them except for 12 that I'm referring, all of them.
So 12 are unoccupied.
No, every single one that I've just mentioned is occupied.
Okay, because before when I asked how many units were occupied, you said 12.
At the park.
Okay, again, clarification, transparency is really important. And then you noted that you believe for every 100 units that are built, there should be 1 student
Correct.
that is going to enter the school system. Where is this coming from?
I don't think I said that. I think what I said is that recent development has shown 1 child per 100. And there's an additional 100 bedrooms. And don't forget, there's an additional 24 homes that have also been developed up on Mountaintop.
Okay, because the only project that did somewhat of a school study was Pompton Turnpike.
And that's not developed.
Right.
But
But
I
they
said
said-
a little bit earlier that there was no other school study.
No, there wasn't a school study. It was community quote unquote impact study. It's not really a school study. They just put everything into one and it wasn't specific. But none of the numbers add up. What you're saying, where your stats are coming from, what your projections are, it's really difficult for the residents to get an understanding of what they are to expect when there's no reports that actually have projections and actual data to show them that this is what they have to look forward to. This is what our schools should be expecting. This is what we have to prepare for. Did the township do any of these studies? Because the onus can be on you as mayor to do a study when such a significant amount of units are being built in town. So was there a study conducted by the township on either traffic or schools?
No, the township did not incur an expense to have a traffic study when the applicants provided and did their own.
So what about a school study? Because as we said, no studies have been provided, no specific studies as the impact on schools. So since most of the applicants have not done, hold on, I'm still speaking, sorry. since no studies were provided, then wouldn't the onus be on the township to ensure that projects that are approved don't impact the student to teacher ratio, or the fact that we might not be able to have all of these students in the schools that we currently have? Because you're right, you relied on traffic studies because you just said those studies were studied them at school, not important, fine. Why didn't the township do a study?
There was no need for the township to do a study.
Why?
Why? Because statistically in Little Falls, in about the past almost 400 total bedrooms that have been created, there's 4 kids added to our schools. The issue, again, I don't disagree that there's been a major influx into our schools, but it is not because of any of the new developments with similar types of building as we see happening now.
Respectfully, Mayor, that's because they're not all occupied.
No, but 400 of them are. 400 of the
You
bedrooms,
just told me,
about 400 of the bedrooms are, and there's been 4 children added.
at the last meeting, you said 40 were occupied and 4 children.
So you're again picking and choosing. That was
No,
with
you
respect
said,
to traffic. The argument that you and your colleagues made, and this is not intended to be political, and this is
it's
why.
not political, it's literally a question.
Political debate. No, so I will be very clear.
And James, in all fairness, you're not running for
may.
office, so how could it be a political debate?
Ms. Powell,
Let the mayor answer.
I'll answer the 40 units. The 40 units was, I asked the question, and I don't recall who it was to, how many units do you believe that since I have been elected mayor, since my administration has been in, have been approved and are now occupied? And someone guessed 200 and some odd units, maybe 300 units. I forget what the number was. The answer to the question, how many units have been approved by and are now occupied since I have been mayor? The answer is 40. Now, there's 34 units at 44 Main that was approved prior to my administration. There are 50 units at the Abbey, approved, I think, 14 or 16 years ago at this point, but recently built. 24 units at Autumn Point, same thing. There were 8 units that have been approved down at, I believe, 750 Main, something like that. And there were 24 units that were also approved at the, I'm sorry, on Stevens Ave. And again, they've resulted in 4 students. So what I'm doing is using the statistical data of the 400-ish bedrooms that have been created in the past handful of years, saying that results in 4 students. That argument is in relation to the number of students in the school overcrowded. Part 2 to that is, people have said all of the development approved by me and my administration has created ample amounts of traffic in Little Falls. And to that I say, it's not the 40 units that have been approved and developed since I've been mayor that have created traffic in Little Falls. So again, you're taking 2 different arguments and combining them into one. One is about the student population in our schools. The other is about the traffic in Little Falls.
In all fairness, I have asked questions about the impact of traffic that the units approved by your administration are going to have in Little Falls, and the impact that's going to have on the schools, and that was it. Nothing done previously because that's been done, and now we have to deal with what's going forward. But I do thank you for your time. And again, Council and Mayor, thank you for letting me speak again.
Absolutely. Thank you for joining us. Ms. Kuchar, anyone in the chat that wants to join us? Anyone else coming forward?
Yes, Sam Sheber.
Yes, good evening.
I just want to clarify something on the taxes. You're not supposed to tax on what you pay for the house or the counter. You have to get an appraisal with comparables. So because a house sells for 600,000, they don't get taxed at 600,000. They have to do comparables. It may be too high or maybe too low for taxes. So whatever you're using for taxes, is not correct, either you or the developer. It has to be appraised, not assessed, appraised. You're gonna have to see that, what do you call it, 1,300 unit, square foot unit in one complex is taxed at so much. And the other one is the same, identical, can't be taxed more. It has to be by square foot, has to be by how many baths, etc. And then a land.
Mayor,
So-
on new purchases, the assessment is done based upon a true value to market.
Market value.
Correct.
Market value is assessed, not, what do you call it, Mayor?
Mayor,
It's not-
market value is the value that an individual purchases that unit for.
No, that's what they call welcome home tax, and that's incorrect. Because some houses, if they bought it for 400,000, and next
I'm
year,
sorry, I meant to say new construction. I think I said new purchases, new construction.
yeah, but how do they assess by square foot of their house, of the unit? You have other units to go by. Look, this is what I'm just telling you. You can, I'm just saying the taxes are gonna be all screwed up that way. So I'm just letting you know how they appraise. It has to be appraised.
Thank you,
It's
Mr.
what you're
Sheehan.
paying for. You said the appraisal, a person can buy something for 100,000 and maybe only worth 50,000. Or it could be worth 150. So they have to do it by comparables of units, and that's how it is. So it's going to be, all you're doing is estimating, and it may be too high or maybe too low. That's all.
And Mr. Schumer, that's what the tax assessors, one of the tax assessors' roles are.
That's what he goes on, yes, and that's what you get taxed on. So it's not easy. It's not easy, but he has apartments to go by. You got new ones. You got new townhouses that have the same square feet. And he can use them as a comparable. That's simple. Then you just bring in the land.
Thank you, Mr. Sheehan.
It's bad when you have no comparables. You have plenty there. So you may be overestimating or underestimating. You have to see what the other ones are taxed at.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Is there anyone else, Mr. Cushing, in the chat would like to join us this evening?
I do not believe.
Is there anyone in the audience would like to come before us? Seeing no one else come before us, I have a motion to close this meeting.
So moved.
I have a second.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed signify by saying nay. This meeting is now closed.